Well, the suit is made of this material. Inside this layer is shredded lead, a resistance against atomic rays. Okay, Richard, on your way to the air raid shelter.
Attention, attention. This is an official civil defense warning. This is not a test. The United States is under nuclear attack.
It's going to happen. Duck and cover, and everybody puts their heads like this, and you scramble under the desk, and then we get up after it, and we resume our social studies, and nobody talks about it. Nobody talks. The teachers don't say, hey, this is crazy what we're doing to the kids. You know, this is not how we want you to grow up to be, you know. No, the teachers just went through this stuff in some kind of numb trance, because if they said no,
And on that happy note, starting the show. I haven't done this for so long. I'm sorry, folks. Haven't been here to do the show, and we've had Dr. Judy doing gardening, and it's just May. May, come what may. It's been a crazy month in terms of the news, and I've got so much that I would like to share with you in terms of what I've been looking at and investigating. But I just thought I would start this Psyop recovery program with a little bit of soothing music to take the edge off of what we all know to be happening in the world. It's all happening out there, folks, and people are screaming and yelling and lying and obfuscating, and it's exactly how the powers that be want it to be. And that opening is just another one of those indications of how they want it to be. That was the era that I grew up in. I was right at the end of that. I didn't have to duck and cover under my desk, but I certainly understood the constant threat of the bomb. And for those of you that are younger and haven't had to experience that, that was just a little tiny taste of what it was like to be growing up in that era, and you wonder why they all turned into hippies. They all wanted to listen to their own music, and they rejected the whole Psyop. They weren't interested in the bomb. They weren't interested in perpetuating war. And we've been in that mode, I think, definitely since Kennedy was shot, since he was murdered, assassinated by those that didn't like to see any change coming along. And all I can say is we need to really be praying that that doesn't happen again at this time, as the same rhetoric is coming to the surface as people are in their corners deciding what's truth, what's not truth. And frankly, it's kind of weird to see the replay, but there is somebody at the helm that I think can handle the truth and can deal with the situation. I think JFK was very naive, and I think we were all very naive at that point. You look at the training that was going on, you look at the way that people were told that they needed to duck and cover. And some people decided that they were going to come out from under the cover, and they weren't going to play the game anymore. They weren't going to do that anymore. And I think that's kind of something that people in the upper echelons weren't expecting to have happen. So as I mentioned, I'm just sort of waiting for anybody that might be joining us. I don't expect a lot of people joining us because I've been so negligent in the way that I've been operating things this month. As I say in the description, I'm actually going to school. I'm taking some courses. I'm actually trying to get a degree, and there's that. There's also the fact that I've been working on the website, a couple of websites, and trying to get everything tickety-boo. And I guess most important from my point of view is the Airstream studio, out of which I am operating right now. I'm feeling pretty good about it right now because I've been working on it all month, and I've got up the acoustic tiles, the stage is set. This doesn't look too good without people actually playing music, people on the stage, people being interviewed, but you get the sense of what's happening there. We've got some fun things in store for you guys, and I know this is the Psyop recovery program, but this is all part of the recovery, and that's why I have the soothing music and a little bit of a quiet time to discuss some of the things that need to be talked about in a way that is soothing after that crazy opening. I've been watching a lot of, I guess, documentaries. I'm not sure exactly what you would call them. I've been watching a lot of different material from various eras in the 20th century, and it's been really interesting. My grandparents came in 1914. They came to Ellis Island. They came over from England. Everybody came from somewhere. They came through Ellis Island, 1914, and lived in New York for a period of time. And I've been really interested in that era. My grandfather he's a filmmaker. He was brought over to, I guess, lend some expertise at the Eastman Kodak Company, and that was in Rochester, New York. Sorry, I don't have it in front of me. I'm just trying to go by memory. Anyway, it's still there. So that was just the inception, I think, of their filmmaking. I don't know, they were sort of transitioning into filmmaking. They brought my grandfather over. He'd been working with British Pathé. They were the ones that made all the newsreels that you see at Pathé. And that started in Paris, which is why it's a French word, Pathé. So there's media in the blood. And I sort of focused on that, and then I got really interested in the idea that here are these English folk who lived in New York, an Englishman and woman in New York. That's before my dad was born. My grandfather was relocated over to what was then Glendale, California. It was before Hollywood. It was just becoming Hollywood. That was 1915. So they weren't in New York for too long before he got moved over to the West Coast. And yeah, it's a really interesting journey that they had, and then up to Canada. But it's all about the media, and it's really interesting to watch the progression to the point where here I am able to do this amazing multimedia thing on the air. But there's a part of it that people don't recognize, I guess, because unless you know me, you wouldn't know that my dad was really into Airstreams. He was a photographer, he was a filmmaker, he was also in the military. Unfortunately, people of his era didn't get a lot of choice about what they got to do, so he had to serve overseas, and there was also the depression that they had to contend with, so they didn't just give up jobs that easily to start their own businesses. And so my dad was a photographer in the military, and yeah, there's a lot of things in between, but he did love Airstreams. So when we would go camping, he would always take me to the Airstream. He'd knock on the door and he'd ask people if we could go in. And it was embarrassing, but on the other hand, he was an interesting guy, and he was shell-shocked during the war. He was in Second World War, and then he was also in the Korean War. And he was a mess. He was a basket case, which I didn't know when I was a kid. But I got the benefit of him knocking on the door of Airstreams and going in and talking to the people who were in the campsites next to us. And he had Airstream envy. I think he would have even admitted it. We had a little Terry trailer, and he never did get his Airstream. So the fact that I have an Airstream and that I do media out of the Airstream is a nod to my grandfather and my dad. And it's a really cool project for me. It's not your typical Airstream. It's a 1969, and it's been gutted and completely repurposed. So that's just a little glimpse of it. That's my little stage, and I do have pictures of mission control, as I call it, but since I'm sitting here in mission control, I can't show it to you at this moment, but I will put them up. I think I will have a little rogues gallery of various images from the Airstream. So anything that people do to support this channel is actually going to the Airstream project. I just put a skylight in where the air conditioner used to be. What an albatross. That thing was just huge. And a friend of mine helped me take it off, and I put in my own version of a skylight. And if I could tell you how bad I am at doing this, I would, but the work speaks for itself. You can't see it, but anyway, it's going to be leak-proof. I can pretty much guarantee that, and that was the main thing, because I wanted to keep the weather off